Strap yourself in,
because we're set up, switched on, and ready to go.
This is
the Humane Roundup Podcast.
And now, here's your host.
Hi, and welcome to episode 14 of the Humane Roundup, a podcast where we take you into the demanding yet rewarding lives of animal control, animal service, and humane officers, as well as a behind-the-scenes look at animal shelters. I am Officer Hildy, and with me today, I have Officer Ettinger.
Yo, you know what it is. We keeping it humane, man.
I've got Joe the ACO.
Insane and no, you.
Oh, moment's gone.
Humane in the membrane.
Humane in the brain.
Oh, but we had it good the first time. Well, we got to do it again.
It's fine. I've got Officer Paw Patrol.
Oh, what's cracking, everybody?
And we have Officer Hanna The Humane Hoosier.
I did that on purpose just to make it difficult.
Thanks for being here with us today.
Thanks for the chance to come out. I'm excited to talk to you guys.
Yes. We've been having some technical issues and we're a little behind schedule, so we're just going to kind of jump into the topics and go from there. So thank you, first of all, Hanna, for being here. For those of you that don't know, Hanna is the president of Hoosier. What is the rest of it?
Hoosier Animal Law Officers, Halo.
Halo. So Hanna is
here. Thanks for my care package, by the way. Appreciated that.
You bet.
Also, thanks for my care package. Really appreciated that. The trucks was a really nice touch, too.
I thought you'd enjoy that. I can get the rest of you guys some care packages also. Send me your address. I'll get them to you.
We love care packages.
Free Halo swag.
Yay. And we'll post the link to Halo in the show notes. So
I appreciate that.
I want to do a quick intro of Hanna, and then we're going to jump into the topics. Just like last week, Officer Rose was here with us, trying out to be potentially our new co-host. Hanna is here with us this week, doing the same. So Hanna has been a deputy for 3.5 years at her current department. And in the fall of 2017, she played a big role in creating the animal control division in her county. So she's kind of a big deal there.
I wouldn't say that much.
So in January of 2018, it looks like her department officially rolled out and she transitioned from a typical law enforcement role to the role of the county's animal control officer. Are you the only one, Hanna?
I am the only full-time officer, and then we have one part-time animal control officer also.
Got it. And I think, unlike most of us, you have retained your law enforcement powers as well as your deputy status. So you're kind of, I'm sure you have a
double
lot
dipping.
More. I know. I'm sure you have a lot more resources available to you than a lot of us have. So that's super awesome. Hanna sent a super long bio, and I will be happy to share it in the show notes or somewhere accessible, but because we're a little behind schedule, I'm not going to read the whole thing. But just to sum it all up, Hanna is kind of a big deal at her agency. She's got 2 cats, she's married, and she loves volleyball, lifting weights, and dabbling in some crafting. So,
and I heard she can sing the national anthem backwards.
Oh.
Can in French actually.
Oh, that's exciting.
Wait, the French national anthem or ours?
The American one, just in French.
And actually, Hanna provided us with our topics for today, so she's like on it. So
hate me if you don't like them.
No, they're really good topics. So we'll just jump into the first one, which is the importance of having a leash law or following the leash law for that matter. And I'm sure this is something that we all deal with on a daily basis.
False.
Really?
Michigan does not have a leash law.
Is it voice command?
It is just what I mean. I guess the common term that we all use would be like dog at large.
Sure.
We have that local ordinance everywhere, but there is no leash law in the state of Michigan or in any county that says that your dog has to be on a leash. It just has to be under your control. So if you have a dog that is right next to your side, but it's not on a leash, you're not in violation of any ordinance.
Got it. So Kyle does not deal with leash laws daily, but I'm sure the rest of us do.
So I'll talk to all you guys in 20 minutes when I'm back in part of the conversation.
So yeah, basically this is something that we all deal with in our day-to-day life, unless you're Kyle. From people like running in the parks and what have you. I see dogs off leash all day, and quite honestly, I generally am way too busy to stop and yell at every single person that does not have their dog on a leash. But we can all, I'm sure, think of 1,000 different things that can go wrong by not having your dog on a leash. So, Hannah, I know that you kind of made some notes, so I'll let you kind of take the conversation and then we'll all jump in from there.
I think one of the big reasons is people just think that it's this abstract law or ordinance or whatever level of enforcement it may be, that we're just out to get dogs that are loose and just want to do it just to be a nuisance and inconvenience to them. But what they don't realize is, like you said, a lot of the times when these dogs, and I use dogs, it could be any animal, but particularly dogs, when they're running it loose, they're causing problems.
Hold up. We got a thing on this show. So when you say something like when they're running at loose, we're gonna call you out on that, because I'm guessing you meant
Kyle's
to say
jump.
When we're running at large is what I would imagine you meant to say. But it's cool. Did. This is how we do it on the Humane Roundup podcast, you know?
The grammar police.
Yeah, don't worry, Hannah.
If we got leash
all the
laws,
time. All the time.
Leash laws. We got grammar laws.
All the time they yell at me, but Joe just gets away with saying whatever he wants.
That's because he speaks bilingual.
Yeah, it's because he speaks Spanish.
Well, that's
the only other one that understands him is Ocho.
Well, I have an excuse. You know, my first language was Spanish. I didn't speak English until I was in middle school. So that's my excuse.
Fun fact about Joe the ACO.
There you go. Hola, ¿cómo estás?
So really, the leash law, I look at it in two ways. I look at it, somebody throwing a ball to their dog in the park with no one else around. They have a bag of poop that they've picked up. They have a leash in their hand versus a dog at large in a neighborhood causing issues. I look at those as two different types of violations. How about you?
Well, that's where Michigan comes in. Like I said, you know, we have a dog at large law or dog at large ordinance where you have to maintain control of your dog. So in a situation like you're talking about in the park, yeah, absolutely. You know, you're not in any sort of violation, but as soon as you go to that other scenario, dogs running at large in a neighborhood, whether it's a safety issue or dogs can get hit by a car, whatever, yeah, then your dog is at large. So that's where Michigan comes into play a little bit as far as that goes.
Got it.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point, Daniel. If I'm have nothing else to do and I just happen to be patrolling, if I drive by a park and someone's playing fetch with their dog and their dog's actually fetching the ball and bringing it back to them and like engaged in what they're doing instead of like the owner throws the ball one way, the dog goes the opposite way and is like running up to someone else who has their dog on a leash, like
going to jail.
Yeah, I'm probably not gonna go stop or talk to that person at all if their dog is with them and engaged in like what it's doing. But it's the people who are maybe at the park with their friends or talking on the phone and like not even paying any attention to their dog. And their dog's just roam in the park or roam in the neighborhood or whatever and not at all engaged with the owner. Those are the people that I'm going to stop and have a chat with and potentially cite depending on their attitude and basically just educate them about the leash law and things like that, because those are the types of people and the types of animals that are going to run out into traffic and get hit by a car or run up to someone else's dog and attack it or what have you. So
absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean those are just some of the things that I like to tell this story when I am talking to people about having their dog on a leash or the importance of having a leash law. One of my previous supervisors was actually in a debate with this lady about why her dog needed to be on a leash. And while she was having the conversation with this lady, her dog ran out into the road and got hit by a car. So I generally will tell people that story, and I will replace myself with my old supervisor who actually had this happen to her and tell people like, hey, I've had this happen before. So not only for the safety of your animal, but other people, because I mean, 9 times out of 10, like you don't know what Susie Q, who's walking up to you in the park, you don't know if her dog likes other dogs or not. Or go ahead.
I've unfortunately had the experience of hitting 2 dogs, once on duty and once off duty, and unfortunately both of the dogs died. It
Man,
just
how
goes
fast
to
do you drive?
well,
So I actually have a question about that. So we've all dealt with those calls, right? The HBCs hit by cars where they're dead. Have you guys ever written an owner a citation for dog at large after their dog has been killed?
we have a damaging property ordinance.
I've done
So yeah, there was a situation where the dog caused damage to the vehicle. Yep.
Yeah.
And I had to issue a ticket for that.
Yeah, so my situation was actually pretty similar to that. I could have charged or cited them for property damage. I just went with dog at large. It's the same fine, same penalty, so it didn't really matter. But went to what I would consider like a routine dog hit by car is dead. Go out there, and driver of the vehicle, they're all sorts of distraught, right? They didn't want to hit this dog. Well, the owner of the dog comes out and is yelling at me to charge the driver of the vehicle with animal cruelty because they hit their dog. And I'm trying to sit there and explain to them, you're at fault here, not the driver of the car. They didn't want to hear it. I just got so fed up with them. I cited them for dog at large. I didn't care.
We just had that in Indiana. Somebody had what they claimed to be an ESA, and of course it was in this instance. Of course it was. And it went to the news because they were trying to do the same thing, get animal cruelty charges. And ultimately I talked to the news and they were like, is this even possible? And at least the way Indiana charges are written is unless you could prove they intentionally ran down that dog to hit and kill it, it was ultimately the owner's fault for allowing the dog to run at large.
It's absolutely the owner's fault. Like, there's really no other way to spin it.
Yeah. And for those of you out there who don't know what an ESA is, aka dog.
Nope.
Shut up. What?
Pump the brakes. Hold up.
What are you talking about, Hildy?
Support dog. Emotional support dog. Sorry.
Hildy.
Yes.
Officer Paw Patrol has an entire YouTube video dedicated to that right there.
Wow. I'm a fan.
I misspoke. I apologize.
You misspoke like 99% of the people that have ESAs.
Shots fired.
You're listening to the Humane Roundup Podcast.
So back to the Humane Roundup Podcast.
So when it comes to dogs being at large, do you guys cite people when dogs are in front of their property? You're driving by a house, you see the dog just hanging out loose in front of the house. Is that something you guys handle in your state? Because I know here, unless that dog leaves that property, we can't cite him for at large.
How can you charge somebody for at large if the dog's on the property?
We actually have written into our ordinance that if the dog has access to the public right of way, it is considered a violation of the leash law.
So the dogs pretty much have to be tethered, have to be on a leash, or they have to be in a fenced-in yard? Like no ifs, ands, or buts?
That is correct.
Yeah, I used to, when I worked in El Dorado County, that was the rule. So obviously we weren't driving around being dicks and citing people whose dogs were on their front lawn. But our county ordinance there did state that if your dog was not contained somehow by fence, leash, rope, something onto your property, technically it was running at large.
So I want to get back to Daniel for a second. So where do invisible fences come into play? Is that considered something that can fine them or no?
So case law we actually have case law on that, and the invisible fence lost. So they tried to claim that because they had the invisible fence that the dog did not have access to the public right of way. However, due to technology and batteries and things like that, the citation was upheld.
So if you're in Denver, don't go buy an invisible fence, is what you're saying.
You can have one. The reality is, it's not going to, if you want it for the purposes of, if you want it for the purposes of trying to not get it. We don't go drive around and look to issue tickets in these scenarios. It's just the reality of, if something were to happen, we could then issue a ticket because of the way that the yard is.
Well, and I have seen dogs that know that if they just run through it, it doesn't continue to shock them. So I have seen dogs on video just freaking run through it. They'll yelp, but once they're out, and they just...
Or they don't want to go back because they know when they cross back over, they'll get shocked again.
Correct, and Absolutely. They don't want to go back. Yeah.
Absolutely.
What were you going to say, Hannah?
I just feel like there's about as good as a retractable leash is.
Shots fired.
She's not lying.
I had someone call it a telescopic leash the other day.
Oh, I like that.
Hey, it's Officer Hildy here, and I wanted to tell you about Anchorfm. We use Anchor for the Humane Roundup podcast for a few reasons. Let me explain. Anchor is free. They've got tons of tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your computer or smartphone. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard places like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Also, everything you need to make a podcast is here in one place. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. And that's ANCHOR.fm. We can talk about a billion things that can go wrong with dogs not being on leashes forever. So that, along with us being a little behind schedule, we're going to get moving. The second thing that Hannah wanted to talk about, which I think is a great topic, is being creative with cases, and meaning that is thinking outside of the box to charge, say, a animal abuser with some other crimes that may not necessarily be animal crimes, but may still fit the bill. So I think I told this story a few episodes back about this in particular, and how our DA here in Sacramento, in the city of Sacramento, Hillary Bagley, is very good at doing things like this. Basically, long story short, there's a gentleman who took a borrowed blanket and a crate that he found across the street from where he was staying, put this dog and the blanket inside of this crate, and then put the crate on a barbecue grill and burned the dog alive.
Shit.
And so outside of animal cruelty, she also charged him with, and it stuck, arson for burning property that did not belong to him, which got him a lot more time in jail than the animal cruelty charge did.
It's clever. It's a good idea.
Yeah, so this is a really good topic, and I think we get kind of caught up in our day-to-day that sometimes we don't even think of the possibility of being able to charge someone with something like arson, because that's not really our expertise, but really it's all about who you know and some connections you can make, and someone that can verify, that fits the bill for arson, or that's theft, or whatever the case may be.
We have a case. I can't go into any detail yet, but it was added disturbing the peace to the case as well. So just like you're saying, something in a way to be creative.
Yeah, I mean, me and Daniel talked about it in one of my videos not that long ago. Like, it was in Aurora, Colorado, a dog being left in the back of a vehicle, and the way Colorado's statutes are written, it's kind of up for interpretation as to whether or not that's legal. But, we were talking about it. Well, dogs need shelter when they're outside. That's state law. Could you charge somebody for not providing adequate shelter if it's left in the back of a pickup truck? Things like that. So, there's always ways to be creative.
Yeah. So, it's just a matter of, like Hannah said, thinking outside of the box and trying to find those things. The other thing that she kind of mentioned, and I'm referencing some notes that she sent me. I know that she didn't actually say these things, but the stacking of charges. So here in California, I believe the most egregious thing that you can think of animal cruelty wise, a felony charge can only potentially get someone up to 5 years, if I'm not mistaken. So stacking charges like animal cruelty with arson, with disturbing the peace, possibly with some other ordinances, local or state laws that may pertain to everything that kind of happened within the scope of an investigation, could potentially end up with that person being in prison for 10 years versus only 5 for the animal cruelty. So
does anyone know, is there a good way to search case law? And the reason I ask is because if our listeners are dealing with a case and they're like, I wonder if I have an opportunity to charge a certain way, and is there case law on that?
Honestly, a good resource. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
A good resource is the Animal Legal Defense Fund. They have attorneys.
ALDF.
Yeah. Yep, ALDF.
But is there a database you can just search, right?
The thing that I always reference to, I believe, is Justia.com, and I can add a link to that in the show notes. But I believe you can just kind of put in some keywords, and I mean, obviously there's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of cases out there, so you may have to search through some of them to find what you're looking for.
Well, that's what I'm wondering is if you can put like a keyword in there, animal cruelty, dog burned or something like that, and then that will bring up a certain case law that you could reference for whatever case you're dealing with.
Yeah, and I may be pronouncing it wrong, but I think it's Justia. Like I said, I'll put a link in the show notes. But yeah, I've got some resources because we were thinking about starting a drone program at my last agency.
Sure.
And I got some resources from an attorney at a training, and they were from that website that kind of talked about police helicopters and just some different things like that, and how low they were flying when they saw things and were able to use those things against someone. So that's how I discovered that website. So
I actually just found another good one. I just did a quick Google search and just AnimalLaw.info. And if you type in your state, it brings up a list of all of the case law within your state. And then you could use a search function within that page for keywords to then be linked to a good case.
Hannah, repeat that again, AnimalLaw.info.
And it looks like it's sponsored through the Michigan State University Animal Legal and Historical Center.
I see you, Michigan.
The only thing I'm going to say about that website, and I know which one she's referring to, just be careful which laws or which case law they have on there. They actually have some that are international, so they don't apply to the United States. There's great information on there. Just double check on what you're referencing. Good example, like I was actually doing some research for one of my videos completely unrelated to like a personal case of mine. And like I found some case law like from India. It was a great law, but does not pertain to the United States at all. So that'd be my one tidbit about that particular website and MSU, Michigan State University.
Got it. And we will add that link in the show notes. And the one thing that I was going to say is hopefully your district attorneys or county council, those types of people in whatever jurisdiction you are in, are hopefully at least available to run things by and ultimately you're going to have to do what they tell you to do, because they're going to be the ones prosecuting your cases and things like that for you. So I would just recommend trying to build a good relationship with them and running things by them, because I won't speak to all of them, but I would say most of them got to where they are by knowing what they're doing, basically. So we do have a couple of minutes left. Hannah, I wanted to let you kind of tell us a little more about Halo.
So Halo is Indiana's professional association for ACOs, cruelty investigators, basically anybody in animal enforcement. But then we also let shelter personnel and rescues and fosters get on board, with the caveat that they are not voting members. So eventually we want Halo to be the agency within the state, or the organization within the state, that kind of sets some standards for people in this field. Because right now in Indiana, you basically say, I like dogs, and you get to be an ACO. I'm not even kidding. There's no training requirements. There's no set age requirements. There's huge discrepancies in how people do this job, as far as what kind of department they work for, what types of powers they have, where they go for training, if they even go for training. So we're just trying to get things a little bit more structured and professional throughout the state, and kind of get on board with some of the other states that seem to have their act together more than Indiana does right now.
Yeah. And we were actually talking about that a couple of episodes ago, about just what you said. Like, if you say, I owned a dog when I was in middle school, like, basically most animal control agencies, you can get a job. And we were talking about that being kind of a hindrance, if you will, to our profession, as far as outside people taking us serious, is that we're just kind of hiring anyone and everyone that will do this job. And so we were talking about if we actually start putting some requirements and things like that into place, so that not just anyone off the street can do this job, because we do wear so many different hats throughout a week's time, a day's time, a month's time. We are not just the dog catchers that everyone thinks we are. We're doing that as well as the social worker and the public health official, and so many different hats. And the drug dealer, yeah. So we need to have someone that is mentally kind of stable themselves to kind of deal with this.
I would say more than kind of mentally stable. I would say that should be a requirement. You're mentally stable.
Yeah. So, so absolutely, you hit the nail on the head that we do for sure need some policies and procedures and some qualification requirements for anyone that's looking to
and that
get
seems
into
like
the
a
profession.
push nationwide at this time. It really is. I know that.
Yeah, we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, NACA's trying to look at some standards. There's a lot of things that, we really just have to continue to do things like this PAWcast, and getting good guests on, getting good hosts, and really having topics that
you say we need to get a good host.
No, getting good hosts. We're replacing. This is audition time, folks. This is whatever that show's called. America's Got Talent, right here, man.
And I think we all have the right mindset. That's why we're all on this podcast, and we do what we do because we really want this profession to stand out. We really want everybody to be more professional, more educated in this field, because we have worked with many people that are not as educated, and they're just doing their 9 to 5, and they just simply don't seem to care, So that's why it's really important for people to understand what their job is all about and how it originated, the cost of this job, and how to educate the public as well. You're not just a animal control officer / police officer. That's not how it works. So I think most of our job is education. But probably like 80%, 60%.
Yeah.
I don't know. Just overall, Like I said, I really appreciate how you guys just brought me on the podcast. I know I don't say much, but this is just my one time. You guys can hear me, and then I'm gonna go back to mute.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed the show.